Hey everybody, Mike here, Ohio Bigfoot Research and Investigation Center, Ohio Bigfoot Podcast, Ohio Bigfoot Project. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to be doing a side project this year, Ohio Bigfoot Outdoors. Notice, I've got fishing rods. Now, what does fishing have to do with Bigfoot? Well, the majority of your sightings, when you look through reports, are given by guys who hunt and fish. Hey everybody, Mike here. Ohio Bigfoot Outdoors, little project I'm doing. You know, Teddy Roosevelt, not only was he a president of the United States, he was also a hunter and an angler. And he gave us one of the greatest things ever in the history of hunting and fishing. He gave us our public land system. He gave us federal land. He gave us BLM, Bureau of Land Management. Land set aside, not for those now, but in his words, for those in the womb of time. That they would have wild places to go enjoy conservation, hunting and angling. And they gave us this system, and a lot of it was called, or a portion of it was called the Midnight Forest, because he had set aside so much land in America for this that the people in the Senate and the House of Representatives got mad and gave him a deadline. They said after this date, no more setting aside land. So on the last night, at the stroke of midnight, he signed a paper where he had designated another 11 million acres. It might have even been 50 million, but I want to say it was around 11 million acres. And he said that in the morning when his constituents seen that, they were so angry that they did cartwheels. But that was called the Midnight Forest. And that was his last push to give us federal land. Things like Yosemite and Devil's Tower, the Smoky Mountains. And one of those pinstrikes of the Midnight Forest, for those of you who live in Ohio, is Wayne National Forest. Now on the other side of that coin is state land. Today is Sunday, January the 8th. It's about 36 degrees. And I'm going to be fishing jig heads once I get up here to the tailwater. Most sawguy and many other species of fish, they swim upstream in the winter. However, if they hit a dam, that's about as far as they can go. So they stage up. They just hang out right there in the tailwaters and the warmer water discharge. And then the turbulence of the dam messes up bait fish. And so it's a great place to find a feeding frenzy. Back in the 1800s, every township was given X amount of acres that was to supply funding for public schools. Now, some of those areas became city parks. Almost every single area was logged out, and the logs were sold to support the schools. And then cities would sell permits for vendors, and they would do theater and some kind of show, plays that people would buy tickets for. And a portion of that funding went to the public schools. Thus, that land that was given to every township was making money for the schools. Well, then came, communities, houses, bigger communities, more people, bigger population. And so school taxes were born, and that land was no longer needed. Now, some places like Texas sold their land to private individuals. That's why Texas has very little public hunting land, because it actually did at one time. Ohio, however, sold theirs to the Department of Natural Resources. Okay, I'm approaching the dam. See a couple guys up there fishing. So I'm going to start low. I'm going to start right down in here, about where that sign is, and slowly start working my way upward. The DNR. We didn't have a floating scale at one time in America of how hunting should be handled. In fact, we had something called market hunting, which was not good. And in 1949, Austrian Dr. Valerius Geist, in a meeting when it was decided that the United States had no model for conservation, Dr. Geist said, "Give me a pen and paper and a few people and I'll write you one." And he did. He wrote one of the greatest pieces of legislature ever, known as the North American Wildlife Model. And that's what gave us our hunting licenses, permits, stamps, tags, lotteries, all of that. It all came from a man by the name of Dr. Valerius Geist. Now, because sawguy have very sharp teeth that are known for chewing through line, first thing I'm going to be adding is one of these short steel leaders. So that'll go on my line first, then my lure. Soon after Dr. Geist, after he wrote his model, who by the way is still living today, was ammunition and firearm makers wanted to self-impose a 2% tax that would go towards supporting these public lands. So the Department of Interior was founded and born, and they started collecting 2% tax on everything hunting. First it was guns and ammo. Now it's guns, ammo, gloves, hat, anything camo, anything you buy in sporting goods. There's a 2% tax that goes to support public lands on the federal level. But it also comes back to your state level state parks. Down in here, we're in the realm of brown trout and northern pike, as well as smallmouth bass. So I'm going to be trading up my lure. Well, actually, I'll still be fishing the same jig heads, but I'm also going to be adding to my arsenal this guy. Which, still, I'm looking at the exact same hillside I've been staring at for half an hour. Generally, when I'm fishing, I'm not talking. I'm being very quiet, but I've moved very little distance. And that's why anglers happen to see Bigfoot a lot. They don't move. They just stand in a spot and they work a section of the river. Then they move down. Like my next move will literally be to that point. And then my next move will be across that creek over to where that tree is. So I'm moving very short distances at a time. Here in Ohio, we have quite a few wildlife areas. And outside of every state park is a wildlife area. In Ohio, the DNR makes its money from the sales of hunting licenses, fishing licenses, and so two more senators, much like Pittman and Robertson, by the name of Dangle and Johnson, came along, and they did the same thing, only for fishing. That's why you pay a tax on marine fuel. And anytime you buy anything fishing, for angling, a 2% tax goes to the Department of Interior. Now on state level, with state lands, much like Ohio and our public wildlife areas, we take on several projects. We'll build dams, we'll build public accesses for hunting, we'll put in boat ramps, they'll put in public access for fishing. Now, Ohio has to pay that money up front. That money comes from the sales of hunting licenses, fishing license, etc. But then they can turn a bill into the Department of Interior, and where that 2% tax from Dangle Johnson and Pittman Robertson kicks in, is that each state can get 25% of that money back, as long as they write their plan well, and it has to involve hunting and fishing. That's why when you're out in a wildlife area and you see that sign, this area closed after 11 p.m. until 6 a.m. for all activities other than those in the pursuit of legally hunting, fishing, or trapping. Well, that's because we're the guys, hunters, fishers, anglers, and trappers. We're the people who pay for that land. We pay for it annually through this tax. That's why we get the rights to be there, because we pay for it. Your normal average person sitting at home watching Netflix, they don't pay for it. The guy out buying ammunition, bows, arrows, broadheads, fly rods, spinning rods, casting rods, lures, tackle boxes, flashlights, hunting boots, hiking boots, they're the ones who pay that tax. Thus, we don't get kicked out of that land. Otherwise, why buy those licenses and tags if we can't use it? So the money goes away. So we get access to these areas. The state keeps those areas open. And they keep it open for those legally in the pursuit of wildlife. You know, if you want to find fishing spots on a river, just look for the bare areas. That's where people are going to fish. That's where there's no branches. That's where there's very little brush. Or in this case, that's where there's structure. And fish love structure. So I'm going to hit this little spot. And again, the dam is just right up there. I've been here over an hour now. So, thus comes to you Ohio Bigfoot Outdoors. The history of hunting and angling in Ohio and the United States. Actually, fishing and hunting in the state of Ohio. And how to use it to your advantage with tips and tricks and information for Bigfoot research. How it all ties together. Where Bigfoot research meets the rod and reel or the bow and arrow. Hunting and fishing, utilizing public lands, paying into the conservation, one of the greatest North American wildlife model, who actually is copied by other countries, meets Bigfoot research. The two colliding. So stay tuned and join me as we have a lot of hunting and fishing adventures together in areas with a history of Bigfoot activity and how the two weld together. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a project I greatly look forward to. Okay guys, it's been about two and a half hours. Didn't catch anything, but that's okay. Still had I'm going to hit that log first. Still had a great afternoon out here. But why fishing? Why fishing for Bigfoot? Well, if you've ever pulled into one of these areas and seen that sign where it says area closed after 11 p.m. to all activities other than hunting and fishing. Well, a fishing license costs $12 or $25 for 12 months. It's good for a year, $25. You can grab a fishing rod. You can be out here at 11 o'clock at night, midnight, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I can sit right here with a cat fishing rod, cast right out through there at 3 o'clock in the morning, and no one can legally kick me out. Now, if I was out here at midnight and a ranger or ODNR officer came along and said, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm looking for Bigfoot." "Well, the park closed at 11. You need to go." Technically, they have the legal right to do that. But if you're hunting or you're fishing, they don't. I am also the original founder of the Inexpensive Sportsman podcast. The founder of the Inexpensive Sportsman, and I wrote a book about conservation in Ohio. And I also wrote a book about fur trapping that's not yet been published. My background is in wildlife management. And now I'm going to show you how hunting and angling can meet, mix, and match with the world of Bigfoot research.